centuries of invasions across the Indian subcontinent led to a devastating cultural casualty. A massive portion of ancient India's foundational texts in philosophy, mathematics, and science were burned, destroyed, or simply lost to history. But that knowledge was not actually wiped out. It survived, perfectly preserved, locked away thousands of feet above sea level on the Tibetan Plateau. This survival was the result of a very specific historical dynamic between the two regions. Ancient India acted as the guru, or teacher, holding vast reservoirs of knowledge, while Tibet positioned itself as the Chela, the deeply devoted student. Over 1,000 years ago, these two civilizations began a massive cross-border exchange. Driven by a desire to learn, Tibetan scholars braved the lethal Himalayan passes to study at Indian universities, absorbing the guru's knowledge and carrying it back to the high mountains. Because the Himalayas provided such intense geographical isolation, Tibet inadvertently became a cultural time capsule. While the original texts withered away in the plains below, the students' isolated vault kept the teacher's greatest intellectual achievements completely intact. In the 7th century, the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo wanted to modernize his empire by importing Indian philosophy and law. He faced an immediate hurdle. His people did not have a written language. To solve this, the king dispatched a brilliant scholar named Thanmi Sambhota to India. Sambhota spent 7 years studying Indian linguistics, mastering Sanskrit grammar and literature under top masters. When Sambhota returned, he engineered the first Tibetan script directly off the Indian Gupta alphabet. He took the 16 Indian vowels and 34 consonants and condensed them to fit the unique sounds of the Tibetan tongue. Armed with this new tool, generations of scholars began translating. They produced the Kagyor and Tangyur, a staggering physical collection of over 6,000 titles covering philosophy, grammar, and poetry, faithfully rendering the Indian originals into Tibetan. An entire civilization constructed a bespoke, highly sophisticated alphabet for the express purpose of downloading another civilization's intellectual heritage. The intellectual migration moved from spiritual philosophy into the hard sciences, starting with a traditional healthcare framework called Sowa Rigpa. Tibetan physicians didn't stop at reading medical manuscripts. Pioneers traveled back and forth across the Himalayas for years, studying under more than 100 different Indian medical masters to perfect their craft. An abstract logic tree illustrates the deep integration of Indian Ayurveda into Tibetan medicine. Core Ayurvedic elemental principles form Sowa Rigpa's roots. This transforms into a rotating wheel, charting how Tibetan astrology absorbed Indian mathematics to track planets and map human lifespans. Unlike many ancient practices, this synthesis of medical and scientific knowledge is still an active, unbroken tradition. Practitioners today are still diagnosing patients and organizing herbs based on those centuries-old principles. Tibet internalized the guru's core scientific operating systems and expanded upon them to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. By the 12th century, a wave of invasions swept across northern India. Monastic universities were destroyed, Buddhism practically disappeared from the subcontinent, and the original Sanskrit texts withered away. 8 centuries later, the Tibetan Plateau faced its own crisis. In 1959, the Chinese occupation of Tibet forced thousands of Tibetans to flee their homeland with whatever they could carry. Led by the 14th Dalai Lama, these refugees crossed the formidable Himalayan passes to seek asylum. Their destination was India, the ancient home of their teachers. Once resettled, contemporary Tibetan institutes began an ambitious project. They started taking the thousands of texts they had preserved in their mountain vault and translating them from Tibetan back into Sanskrit and Hindi. It is a massive, ongoing restoration effort. After a millennium of safeguarding the texts, the Chela is hand-delivering the lost knowledge back to its birthplace. The same geography that protected India's wisdom also dictates the physical survival of the subcontinent today. At an average elevation of 4,000 meters, Tibet holds 46,000 glaciers. That makes it the Earth's largest store of ice outside the North and South Poles, earning it the title of the Water Tower of Asia. This topographical map tracks how that melting ice feeds a massive network of rivers. The Brahmaputra, the Indus, and the Sutlej, all originate on the Tibetan Plateau and act as arteries of fresh water flowing directly down into the Indian plains. The plateau dictates the timing and intensity of the Indian monsoon. Vast agricultural zones across India rely entirely on this water transfer to sustain their populations. India and Tibet are permanently intertwined. They are bound together by tectonic plates, fed by the same life-giving rivers, and anchored by a 1,000-year inheritance of shared wisdom.